Very pleased to just have an excellent meeting with the big city mayors, and we talked a lot about infrastructure money, we talked about community safety, we talked about housing, we talked about responding together to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. I'm very much looking forward to continuing to work very closely with not just the big city mayors, but municipalities and municipal leaders right across the country to respond to people's concerns.
The Prime Minister addressed the mayors of Canada's biggest cities today. They're in Ottawa to tell the government what they'd like to see in this year's federal budget. Mayors are asking for help to fund low-emission transit fleets and support for green infrastructure. Today, the feds announced $2.5 million in funding for 11 new projects in communities through the Green Municipal Fund. But will any of these emission-lowering projects matter if the government approves the $20 billion Teck Frontier mine project in northern Alberta? It's expected to produce over 4 million tons of carbon emissions a year. Naheed Nenshi is the mayor of Calgary. He joins me now in studio. Hi, Mayor Nenshi.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming in. I actually want to start off on the Teck mine.
I had no idea my entire trip to Ottawa would be talking about the Teck mine, but I'm very happy to do it.
Tell me why you're surprised that it ended up being the big topic of discussion in your meeting.
You know, it wasn't so much in the meeting, but in all of the side meetings I've had with the various ministers and MPs while I've been here. This is very much a topic of conversation, and I've been happy to be able to add some color to the discussion, because sometimes it feels, this will shock you when I say this, sometimes it feels like Ottawa is kind of a bubble.
What?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's really important, I think, for people to understand the reality of what's happening across the country at the moment, but also the reality of the need to make difficult decisions to balance the environment and to balance energy and to balance the economy. And, you know, I keep reminding people that, look, in Alberta today, you have a place that has gone from having the lowest unemployment rate in Canada for many, many, many years to the highest in 18 months. You went from 0% vacancy in downtown Calgary to 1 in 4 buildings in downtown Calgary are empty in 18 months. This has been incredibly jarring. It's been incredibly dislocating. And yet, Alberta still is the largest net contributor to federal coffers. And so it's difficult to say, you know, Alberta is an anomaly on the environment, they don't get climate, when we're taking all their money. It's like saying we never talk about the embarrassing uncle who happened to buy us this house.
It's not that black and white, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think. I mean, there's a system in place in which there's a reason that you're the highest net contributors right now. That's because, Alberta still has, and in no way am I taking away from what's happened over the last 18 months, but it still has the highest medium income.
Yes, absolutely.
And so there's a reason that amount of money
is absolutely
contributed. But I understand the sentiment.
Absolutely. But the point being, the reason the income is high is because the economy is good, even when it's bad. You know, I often say, look, in Calgary, our valleys are other people's peaks. But we still have well over 100,000 people dislocated, out of work, and some real challenges, even in balancing my own budget. So that takes us to Teck. Look, here's a project that, on the face of it, on paper, absolutely should be approved. It's gone through the environmental assessments. It's taken 11 years, but it has ticked off every box. It is a company that, it sounds like an oxymoron, but is the greenest mining company in the world. They've committed to go net zero by 2050. But it's still 4 megatons, and we have a carbon budget. And so it's difficult for some folks to reconcile, how do we go up 4 megatons when we got to go down 70-odd megatons? But at the same time, you got to understand that the economy is a complex organism. And we've got to work on these things in a way that are thoughtful and get us to where we need to go on climate, but also have economic development today. And I was a bit surprised that in some of the conversations that I've had here in Ottawa, the nuance of the discussion doesn't appear to be there. You know, it's about, here's a strip mine that's half the size of Edmonton and it's going to hurt the whooping cranes, and where do we go from here? And I don't want to belittle that conversation. It's an important discussion, but it also needs to be, I think, a nuanced conversation. And
why do you think it's so binary right now?
I think the world is binary right now, and I think that we've gone to a world where it's climate or economy, where it's jobs or greenhouse gas emissions, and that's not how this country works. So fundamentally, we got to get beyond that black and white binariness. You know, I always joke, every time I'm on here, I point out that I wear purple every day because it's red and blue. And we got to get to a purple conversation here about what we want to do together, I think.
In that vein, let me ask you, because I wrote a piece over the weekend about something that the cabinet was considering, and that is essentially saying yes, but attaching a condition whereby they would like to see not just the 100 megaton cap legislated, which it is, but not implemented through regulation, but then a commitment by Alberta as a province to go net zero by 2050 and that legislated. What would your message to Premier Kenney on that be?
I'll tell you what my message to Premier Kenney has been, which is the same as my message to the federal government. Let's make a deal. Let's talk about the very real needs to get to where we need to go by 2050. Let's talk about the very real needs to not sacrifice our economic potential across the country in order to do that. Well, let's make a deal. And I think that it is entirely appropriate to say, let's implement the 100 megaton cap. Now, for those who don't know what we're talking about, we're getting jargony very quickly. The previous Alberta government had put a cap on emissions from the oil sands. The current government has not rescinded the cap, but has not really come out and said, this is what we need to do. And I bet if we said, let's put a cap there, let's have that cap decline over time in a way that's rational, that makes sense, that helps industry get to that net zero number, I think there's a deal to be had. You do. Is your sense after your conversations that if that kind of willingness on the part of the province was shown, there could be a positive reception? So former Minister Amarjeet Sohi also wrote an op-ed on the weekend, and look, that's the deal. The deal that he's highlighted is the deal. The practicalities of the deal are not that complicated. And I think they make sense, and I think that there's something that most citizens of Canada could accept. But sometimes, what's the name of this show? Power and Politics, not Policy and Governance. Sometimes. Depends on the night. Yeah. Sometimes the politics gets in the way. And so, yes, is there a practical deal that makes sense for Canada? Absolutely. It's not complicated. It's easy to get to. Can that deal make it through the political process, I think, is the hard question. And what is your sense of the answer after your few days here? It's going to be harder than I thought, but we elect smart people in every order of government, and we elect people who have the best interest of the country at heart, and I think we can get there. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, Mayor Nenshi. Pleasure as always to have you here. It's always great to talk to you. Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.